So, good morning. It's 10 o'clock, and we're going to begin with this first meeting. So I want to thank all of you and that you're here with us, and I want to thank you to everyone who has joined us by streaming the meeting on the House website. So we're doing both our committee members and we're streaming live for those who want to view us publicly. Before we begin, we should also say thank you to the House Media Service and the General Assembly IT team for their help in getting this meeting organized. With the world adjusting to COVID-19, our committee has had to adjust as well. By having these meetings virtually, my hope is we can still properly review these bills while also keeping the committee and the public safe when we resume session. With that in mind, this is the format we will use today and moving forward. Remember, your buttons will be muted unless you're speaking. Today, we will only hear bill presentations from the Senate authors. As we hear them present, please make notes of any questions you may have. I'm going to repeat that. That will be your opportunity to have your questions answered at a later time. So please make note of any questions you may have. Following the meeting, committee members will receive an email with instructions to submit questions for the bill's authors and/or relevant agency experts. We will also be providing a way for the public to submit their comments for the record. Our next meeting, which will hopefully be next week, will have the authors and agency experts answering the submitted questions from our committee members. My hope is that by having these preliminary meetings, we're able to both be more efficient and safer when session resumes. Before we turn it over to bill authors, I'm going to ask David Hartman to explain the public comment process quickly. He'll show us the same information, both for committee members and the public, at the end of the meeting. Then we'll move to our Senate bill authors, and we ask that they be thorough but brief. But David, I turn it over to you and to my committee members. We've got excellent support staff at the Capitol. I just wanted to begin. Thank you.
Good morning, y'all. Most of y'all already know me, but my name is David Hartman. I'm the analyst that's assigned to Natural Resources Environment Committee. So hopefully right now you'll be seeing I apologize, one moment. All right. Sorry for the echo. But what you see on your screen right now is an email address for the public to submit their comments. What we ask you do is in the subject line, please include only the bill numbers you wish to comment on. In the body of emails, please format it with number 1, your name, 2, the organization you represent, or if you're a citizen, please provide the city and county of your residence. Number 3, your bill number. Or the bill numbers that you wish to speak to and whether you support or oppose them. And then after that, any additional comments. Our hope is to at the very least make sure that the comments and public comments make it to every member and potentially address the next meeting. Thank you.
So now we're going to begin with our bill presentation, and our first person up is Senator Strickland. Senator, you're on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How are you this morning?
Good, thank you. So aren't you going to be back in the House?
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be back with you guys. It's kind of odd doing it in this format, but I'm happy to be back with my friends in the House again regardless. So I have for y'all Senate Bill 426, and you guys discussed a similar House bill earlier this year before everything broke, dealing with ethylene oxide. And as you may recall, this bill came from the issues we were having with 2 facilities in particular in Georgia, one Sterigenics in Cobb County, and also BARD or BD out in Newton County in my district. An issue you may remember before COVID took over all the news, a big thing we learned last year is that these companies are using this chemical, ethylene oxide, to sterilize medical equipment. But we were seeing high rates of cancer in the communities near these facilities. We learned via an article about leaks that were happening at these facilities and the high level ethylene oxide in the air and the medical impact that was having on people. And it concerns a lot of us from day one. A big problem we had is we did not know about these issues or this study, what was happening with EPD, until we learned about it in an article. And since that time, we have done a lot of good work in trying to rebuild the trust of the citizens in Newton County and Cobb County in particular, and Fulton County, that were impacted by this directly, because EPD has gone back in and has new permits, and in particular, out my way in Newton County has new permits to address the ethylene oxide that's being used in these facilities. And one of the problems we still have had, though, is there still are leaks and there still are spills. And what citizens were having to do is constantly send open records requests to EPD to find out about these violations of the permits. And that's not good for anybody. It's not good for the citizens to have to constantly submit open records requests to know what's going on in their backyard. And it's not good for the EPD to have to constantly deal with open records requests either. And so there are many things that we have to do. A lot of this goes to the federal level with EPA rules to address ethylene oxide. But one of the things we could do here at the state level is what we did with Senate Bill 426. And that's to make sure that the citizens immediately have access to information about any leaks or spills of ethylene oxide that happen at these facilities. And so with Senate Bill 426, if you take a look at the actual language of the bill, the first section, or section 1, under A1, we define what spill or release is. And a spill or release references another code section, OCGA 12-14-1. And to say it in layman's terms, is any release of this chemical that is contrary to their permit. And so any release of ethylene oxide that goes against what they're allowed to release out there will be a spill or release. And then we say, starting on line 24, that as a condition of any permits that are issued in our state, any permits that come from EPD, if there is a spill or release, the facility must report that within 24 hours to EPD. And so immediately the spill or release gets reported to EPD. And then we get on to section 2. And in section 2, we require, as one of the duties of the director of EPD, to immediately report any of these spills or releases to a publicly accessible website. And so this eliminates the issue with having to do open records requests. So right away, within 24 hours, a facility has to report a spill or release, and then the director of EPD will put this immediately on a website so citizens can see it in one place. Now, a little bit more background. EPD is already doing this now. We brought them to the table to work on this bill because, again, they had no interest in wanting to have to deal with a process that requires people to send them open records requests either. And so this is now in the permits for these facilities, and this website is already set up. I want to recognize Chairman Don Parsons and also Representative Eric Allen. I worked with them on this bill as well. I know there was a House bill you guys heard, but we all came together different versions of this, and we came together and passed something that came out unanimously in the Senate. And I was really proud of that, that I think if nothing else, while this may already be the practice, it codifies that practice, but hopefully it restores some trust for the citizens in these communities, EPD. So that's my bill, Madam Chair. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So the format for our questions, just to refresh our committee members, is that at this point, be sure you've jotted down what your questions are. And at the end of this meeting, there will be a prompt on where to send your questions. And then, Senator, you'll get those questions. And then we're hoping our consequent meeting will give you an opportunity to answer those. To the general public, there's also going to be a prompt on how to do your public comments. But thank you, Senator. You gave us the information we needed, and you did it in a brief and concise, thorough manner. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. See you guys soon.
Yes. Now we go on to our next presenter, which is Senator John Kennedy. I'm seeing David.
Good morning. Can you hear me now?
What? Yes, I've got to unmute. Yes, Senator, thank you very much. And thank you for participating in this virtual meeting. If you will give us a brief but thorough insight into your piece of legislation. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nice to see you and other members of the committee, and certainly look forward to all of us gathering back at the Capitol under some sort of circumstances here in a few days. So it's nice to see you. And thank you for setting this up so that we can keep things moving. I appreciate that. And I think as we get back to the Capitol, folks are really going to appreciate the additional time that we'll have once we're there, because y'all have been thoughtful about how to keep legislation moving. So thank you for that. Senate Bill 445 is fairly simple in that it comes to you through me by a request of our mayor and council of the consolidated government of Macon-Bibb County. It is a bill that would allow the director of the Environmental Protection Division to grant issuing authority of permits for land disturbing activities to a water or sewer or water and sewage authority under certain conditions. What it does is it simply amends OCGA 1273 to expand the definition of an LIA, that is a local issuing authority. Under current law, an LIA is defined as a governing authority, which is further defined as a city or a county. And so that can receive that proper certification. The bill simply recaptures, if you will, to expand the definition of an LIA to include a water or water and sewer authority that have been authorized by local law to be responsible for the stormwater management pursuant to an intergovernmental agreement. That's what Macon-Bibb, the consolidated government, did with regard to an IGA that was signed July 31 of 2019. It's about a 31-page document, and this goes back to the Macon Water Authority was formed back in the 70s, and as city management has progressed, as the consolidated government has progressed, the decision of our city leaders was that they wanted to transfer the responsibility for the stormwater management within the Macon-Bibb County area to the Macon Water Authority. And when the city attorney looked at it, realized, wait a minute, and also I should say that the IGA contemplates that the Macon Water Authority will be the LIA. And so then when paired back to the current law, realized, wait a minute, and a water authority cannot be an LIA unless we change the definition. And so that's what the bill does. Simply allows a water authority, in this case, Macon Water Authority, to be a local issuing authority, provided that it's pursuant to an intergovernmental agreement. It's not specific. This is not local legislation because it's not specific to Macon-Bibb. It comes out of a necessary change to the general law, and it's written so that it's not specific to Macon-Bibb and defines this LIA authority being able to be extended, provided you have an intergovernmental agreement. I think one of the important things to recognize there is, in the way the statute is proposed as amended, is it requires that all of the obligations that come with being an LIA be transferred to in this case, the Macon Water Authority, or as defined would be a water or water and sewer authority. So that, Madam Chair, is fairly simple and straightforward, but it is that. And I'll be, I should ask make one other comment, and that is I'm not aware of any opposition or concerns about this. I did have some meetings, following the presentation on the Senate side with DNR's folks, and it's my understanding that they're fine with this. They wanted to, after we talked about it, to have an understanding of how this would work. I'm going to, Madam Chair, go back, and since that was weeks ago, I want to confirm my memory on that. I certainly don't want to make that representation to the committee unless I know that it's still to be true. So I'll do that in the interim time that we have after today, and confirm that they're fine with it. And finally, it comes to you from a bipartisan request of our local delegation through sourced from the request of our mayor and commission.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. And again, to our committee members, if you have any questions, please jot them down. You'll see the prompt at the end of our meeting on how to do that by getting your questions to David Hartman. So thank you, Senator. Again, you were concise but thorough, so that helps us a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I be excused and leave the meeting now?
Yes, we go get a glass of water for all of us.
All right, I'll do that. Thanks. Hope y'all have a great day and look forward to seeing everybody soon.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Up next, we have Senator William Ligon. And the senator, I believe, has 4 bills before our committee. So again, just as urging all of our bill presenters to be brief but thorough. And so, Senator, see if we've got you on the screen.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, good morning to you. The mic is yours, or the Zoom is yours.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you, Madam Chair, again for holding this meeting and for allowing me to present my bills. And I think I may only have 3 bills. If I have another one, I've missed one.
Okay. So I just want to interject. Yes, it's 3, not 4. Thank you.
Okay. You had me worried there for a minute. I
Yeah,
thought, oh, Lord,
yeah. Sorry. Just want to see if you're awake.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I'll start with Senate Bill 123, and I believe that you have had a very similar bill pass through your committee. And what this does is it increases the surcharge that a municipal solid waste disposal facility must charge on coal ash from $1 a ton to $2 a ton, to the $2.50 per ton that is charged for all other materials. And basically, you could say that we're subsidizing bringing in coal ash to the state, and there are a lot of people in our state that are now becoming more and more concerned about this, and so it would just eliminate that practice. One difference between this bill and the bill that moved through, the House bill that moved through your committee, is that it also eliminates the obligation to use 50% of the surcharges collected for certain, I guess, activities or work related to that waste facility. And what we've seen from talking to some of our counties is that they're building up a surplus of funds now, and that they really, it would be helpful to them to be able to use these funds for other purposes within the county. And that's why we have that provision in there to eliminate that. And but that is the essence of the bill. I could move on now if the chair lady would like to the next bill.
Yes, that would be, and then when you're finished with this one, then move on to your next one.
Okay. The next bill will be Senate Bill 356. And this is specifically to help McIntosh County. McIntosh County operates its own landfill, and it is up next to the bombing range, the Townsend bombing range that is used by the military to practice their bombing runs. And what we're doing is amending some prior legislation that was enacted in 1997 for the purpose of keeping a commercial landfill out of Long County. And this was done by creating a limit and that the Townsend Long bombing range is located at where Long, Liberty, and McIntosh counties come together. And so the current legislation says that you cannot have a landfill within 2 miles of the bombing range. At the time, the McIntosh County landfill was in operation, but because of the law, they can't expand it, and they need to expand it now, or otherwise they're going to have to spend millions of dollars, which they don't have, to find another site, to buy more property, and to create a landfill. And it would just be a whole lot easier to expand and a lot more cost effective to expand the one that they have. And so this bill just provides that it does not prohibit the expansion of a landfill that was in operation in 1997. And so that's what this bill does. The next bill is Senate Bill 384. And in the prior bill, we were working to expand a landfill. In this one, we want to protect an area from landfills. And I believe that you also had similar legislation that came through your committee, and it was presented by Representative Stephen Meeks. In South Georgia, we have what are called a few rivers that are called Blackwater Rivers. And they generally have a low volume. They have a lot of sedimentation. The water is not muddy, but it is dark. It's stained like tea. And they're characterized by low oxygen levels, or lower oxygen levels. And they are relatively environmentally sensitive. They usually, we see that they're in wetland areas, in areas where the soils are very porous, and if there were any type of pollution or leaching coming from landfills, it can make its way very easily into the river system. And we're creating a corridor within the, let's see, I believe it was 2 miles of the high water mark of the landfill, where you would not be able to install or permit a landfill. And looking at these rivers, they're important to the economy of South Georgia. They provide a lot of recreation. There's fishing, there's camping, there's canoeing. People hunt in the freshwater areas. For example, the Satilla River is known for the red breast fishing there. It's very popular, and people come from all over the state to enjoy these resources. Then they flow, they're not very long rivers, they flow down into, for example, the Satilla flows down into the Atlantic Ocean, into our marshes and other estuaries, and we've worked hard to protect those areas and that environment. We enacted legislation that has opened the door for commercial oyster fishing a few years ago. So these are sensitive areas. They're worthy of our protection and consideration. And just a general thought on this is that, you know, there's some areas of our state where it's suitable to have a landfill, like the McIntosh County landfill. That area is not adjacent to any sensitive areas. The soils, there's gumbo. It's not something where the water can easily leach out and spread to other sensitive areas. But these areas, they are sensitive. And we should really think about that and work hard to protect them. Now, I know that in our area in South Georgia, there's no need for additional landfills for our area. We can manage with what we have, and there's capacity for a significant amount of time into the future. But what we're seeing is that outside groups are looking to come in and open up large-scale landfills to bring in garbage and other materials and coal ash from outside of the state of Georgia. And Georgia should not become the dumping ground for other people's trash and refuse and waste. And especially in areas that are really places where people, they come to live to these areas, they recreate, they enjoy the resources and the beauty of the outdoors and the waters. And so that's why I feel that the bill is necessary. And so if you wanted to look at the bill, the operative lines are on lines 258 through 273, and it just makes it clear that these landfills would not be permitted within the corridor that runs along these rivers.
Thank you, Senator. Does that complete your presentations?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And so the process that we're following is that we are asking our committee members to submit written questions to David Hartman, our committee analyst, and then we will get that information back to you. And we're also asking for the public to do their comments as well. So this is just a hearing only meeting. And then as we get more familiar with our process, we plan that to be our next step. So thank you again, Katie Bills, but you were briefing and thorough. So really appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll sign off and thank you for, again, holding these hearings before we get back so we can get the process started. I think it was wise of you to do that. So,
thank you very much.
okay.
Now we're moving on to Senator Tyler Harper. And good morning to Chair of the Senate Natural Resource and Environment Committee. And while we're connecting our chairman in, I want to say I know we have agency heads impacted by our legislation watching us, and we're still maintaining distances at the Capitol and timing who is at the Capitol on certain days. But needless to say, Nicole Chappelle is being very attentive and watching our meetings as well. So, and one more thing to add is trying to keep up with our streaming capacity, and we have over 100 people streaming and watching this meeting. So that's very encouraging because it gives our bill presenters opportunity to present. It gives our committee opportunities to make notes and ask questions. And then also our public is able to participate. So far, this is good feedback we're getting. And we would also look for feedback from our committee members as well when you have your questions. And now we're going to move over to Senator Tyler Harper.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, I just muted my button to give you the show. So you're on.
I wanted to make sure I was coming through. All is good. Well, I will, it's good to be with you all, and look forward to seeing you all in a little over a week when we get back to the Capitol. And but appreciate you taking some time to let's go ahead and going through some of this and knocking some of this out before we get back, because hopefully we can move through our remaining 11 days fairly quickly when we get back to session. That said, Madam Chairman, I'm going to be as brief as possible. I think these are fairly self-explanatory. The two pieces of legislation I got for you today, Senate Bill 473 and 474, are very similar. I'm going to kind of talk about them in conjunction. These are agency bills from the Department of Natural Resources, and both bills are legislative changes per changes that we're making in the budget. And the changes that we're making in the budget obviously are reflective of some of the reductions that we were doing prior to COVID-19, and also is even more applicable now afterwards with the situation that we have regarding the budget going forward. That said, Senate Bill 473 simply transfers the Historic Preservation Division from the Department of Natural Resources to the Department of Community Affairs, starting in the FY21 budget. DNR would retain archaeology under the Parks Division, but DCA would be in control of the rest of the Historic Preservation Division. Both DNR and DCA are in support, and obviously the governor's office is in support, and this change is reflected in the current budget that the Senate has that we're working on. Moving on to Senate Bill 474, it's very similar, but it's opposite move. DNR will be taking on two welcome centers, one in Plains and one in Sylvania, from the Department of Economic Development. And this would be the legislative authority to make that move happen. Both the Department of Economic Development and DNR are in agreement, as well as the governor's office, and this change is reflected in the budget as well. And that is a very brief description of what these two pieces of legislation do. And I'll obviously, people will be submitting questions. If there's any questions, I'll look forward to seeing what those may be, Madam Chairman. But until then, thank you again, and appreciate being with y'all this morning, and look forward to seeing y'all soon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Look forward to seeing you as well. And then our next presenter is Senator Frank Ginn. So if you will check in with us now, Senator, we'd appreciate it. We're not seeing any communication from Senator Ginn. We'll just pause briefly in case there's just a time delay there. If we don't hear from Senator Ginn, obviously he can use the next meeting time slot to present his bill and give his information. But we're going to wait just briefly to give him that opportunity. So what we'll do is we'll just hold the senator's bill to our next, probably our next virtual meeting. David is going to go over all the specifics now as to how committee members can turn in their information and any other information they need about the committee. By turning information, I mean ask your questions. And then to our viewing public, there will also be an explanation from David on how to live stream. And then I'll let, for that portion, we're going to figure this out, but we're close to drawing our meeting to a close, and I cannot thank the committee members enough for your participation in making this possible. David is going to go ahead and take the mic as soon as he can.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And hopefully right now you are seeing a slide on your screen here. This is what I was trying to show earlier, but unfortunately, since I was in the same room with Madam Chair, there's a little bit of an echo. But these are the instructions to submit public comment. We ask that you please send it to the address you see on the screen, which is nre@house.ga.gov. In the subject line, please include only the bill numbers you're wishing to speak to, so it allows us to put them all in order and organize it. And then in the body, please try and follow this format if possible. 1, put your name. 2, either your organization and or this, if you're a citizen, please put your city and county of residence. 3, list out the bills and whether you support or oppose them. And then 4, any additional comments, and also feel free to attach any supplemental information. Again, we are at the very least going to make sure that every committee member has public comments with them if they, for them to review. Also, shortly after this meeting, you will be receiving an email from me to the committee members, and that will include instructions on submitting questions for the next meeting. Again, we'll submit the questions in at least 24 hours in advance. We'll also provide them to the bill authors and potentially relevant agencies to ensure that we have answers prepared for you. And of course, if there are any questions y'all might have or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
So thank you for those summaries. Again, thank you committee members and staff and the IT support team. We will get your questions, compile them, give them to the proper legislators for their pieces of legislation, and for the general public, we will also compile your comments. So at this point in time, I am adjourning this meeting. Thank you again for this hearing. It, I think, will help our committee members and the general public get a handle on what's before the House Natural Resource and Environment Committee. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.